Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Before I begin today, a big thank you to Dave for the virtual gift voucher. Thank you very much for the support, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. But on to today. You know, it feels like forever since we've had some good, quality Primarch talk. Those kind of moments that really stick out to me as character building moments. When we really get a glimpse beneath the skin of these Primarchs. And today we're doing just that, with the Primarch of the Emperors Children, Fulgrim. Spoiler warning before we begin, the events we are discussing today are from the novel Fulgrim, the Palatine Phoenix by Josh Reynolds. As always, I really recommend you read the novel for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. Not only that, but we help to support Games Workshop and the Great Black Library, because without them, we don't have this amazing lore to talk about. And I've got to say guys, this book is a great read, it really is. Some of the Primarch novels are a little hit or miss, but this one is a great look into the character of Fulgrim. I highly recommend it. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now the premise of this novel is based around Fulgrim bringing the world of Byzas into compliance, with just 7 of his chosen sons, fueled by a desire to disprove his brother Primarchs, of course playing to their infamous arrogant streak. And we get some interesting insights into his feelings and thoughts in regards to some of his brothers, in particular Horus, Russ and Guilliman. And we'll definitely discuss this another day, but as ever, so much of the Primarch's actions are governed by their relationships and rivalry with their brothers. Throughout the course of this story, Fulgrim is seeking a peaceful compliance. A peaceful surrender of the world to join the Imperium as loyal servants of the Emperor rather than conquered, which of course he makes perfectly clear is going to happen unless they choose the other option. And as ever, there are those that support this and those that resist, even attempting to assassinate him on several occasions. But there are moments within this that Fulgrim speaks to the rulers of Byzas as the representative of the Imperium and the son of the Emperor that he is. And there really are very few Primarchs that spring to mind when you're reading these moments that could truly rival Fulgrim at this. And it really quite takes you back. We're so used to what Fulgrim becomes, his fall from grace, that to see him at his best, at the peak of the crusade in all of his purity, as the Primarch he was always supposed to be, before his arrogance completely overwhelms him, is really quite something. And there's a particular interaction during which Fulgrim is walking out amongst the city with the Chancellor that endeared me to Fulgrim like never before. A crowd was gathering along their route, people craned to see him, and they cheered uproariously as he waved. Word had spread that the Primarch was among them, and this part of the city was slowly taking on a carnival atmosphere. A pleasing sound, Corinth laughed. At first, when you resisted my offer of protective detail, I thought you were trying to bait trouble. And now? I think you've worked a crowd before. Corinth waved to his people, smiling sheepishly. You are well aware of the impact you have in person. You are like some ancient god come again to walk among the faithful. As if to emphasize his point, cheers echoed from the stones. I am but as my father made me, Fulgrim said, pleased by Corinth's insight. And I'm sure you had nothing to do with this sudden, spontaneous gathering of citizenry. To see Fulgrim out walking amongst the people of a world so humbly, the joyous effect that he is having on the people. Just to look upon him. It really helps show us who Fulgrim was supposed to be. The Primarch that he was. Reinforcing why his fall was such a tragedy. And nothing more so than as we continue. A startled yelp caught his attention, and he sighed. Someone had got too close to Kasparos, and the legionary had knocked the mortal sprawling. The braver among the citizenry had the inadvisable habit of trying to touch the hulking giants in their ornate armour, to see if they were real perhaps. Telmar looked over the stunned man, little more than a youth really, and seemed poised to finish what he'd begun. "Calm yourself, Kasparos, or I will do it for you," Fabius hissed, as he grabbed the other legionary's shoulder. He meant no harm. They are only curious, as we would be in their place. "They should keep their hands to themselves," Telmar said, slapping the apothecary's hand away. "As should you, Spider." Fabius stepped back, hands raised. "I meant no offence, brother." "What you mean and what occurs are often two entirely different things," Telmar said. "You should have stayed in your web, Spider. You speak softly of them, but look around. You frighten them more than any of us." A brief aside here, but how nice too to see a glimpse of Fabius standing up for the mere people. People that have so often been his experiment projects. Here, just a glimpse of the honourable man he used to be, before he too falls down the rabbit hole himself. "Enough," Fulgrim said, his voice like quiet thunder. The crowd fell silent. "This is not seemly, my sons. Are you children to brawl in front of strangers?" "My lord, the spider." Telmar hesitated, seeing Fulgrim's expression. "Apothecary Fabius had insulted my person. I would have satisfaction." His hand fell to the hilt of his sword. Fulgrim sighed. "And how has he insulted you?" "By comparing us, to these primitives," Telmar said, glancing at Thorn, who nodded. Fulgrim frowned. And why should he not? Fulgrim looked around, noting the mood of the crowd. They were on the cusp of flight. Telmar's sudden burst of violence had frightened them, shaken them to their very cores. Stories would spread, flying through the city, and from there, the rest of the continent. Awe would turn to fear, fear to resentment, and resentment to resistance. He had seen the same story repeated ad nauseum on a dozen worlds. Fulgrim had always preferred love to fear. Love was stronger. Fear could be conquered, but love, never. It waned and swelled, but it never truly faded. He had made himself loved on Chemos, and he would do the same here. If only more Primarchs had a kernel of that mindset, perhaps the heresy may never have occurred. It's interesting too, for all their differences. With this kind of ideology, you'd think Fulgrim and Vulcan may have been able to establish some common ground. What an interesting interaction that would be to read. Vulcan and Fulgrim together on campaign somewhere. Their opinions on how to interact with the people. Fulgrim is no doubt more of a showman. His thoughts here are true and genuine. Something that is too often forgotten about when we talk of Fulgrim. The Primarch sank to one knee and reached down to help Telmar's victim to his feet. The man stared at him with mingled fright and awe, his mouth working soundlessly. Fulgrim smiled and stood. "I came from nothing," he said, fixing his sons with a steady gaze. "I scrabbled in the quarry pits and down in the deepest mines, carrying buckets on my shoulder because the ascender blew a gasket," he said. "I broke my fingernails on raw ore and grew blisters from heat and labour. You look down on them. blind to the beauty of their struggle, blind to what they might become. If only someone would scrape the filth from their faces. He reached down and lifted a girl onto his shoulders. The girl laughed and clapped, unafraid of the giant, even as her mother wept. Fulgrim indicated the crowd. His voice had driven many of them to their knees. Look at them, my sons. You are the highest, and they the lowest. It is your duty to raise them up, as high as they will go. Anything less is not worthy of you. Telmar and Thorn bowed their heads. Fabius hesitated. Then he too bowed. Satisfied, Fulgrim handed the little girl back to her weeping mother and turned to Corinth. Shall we continue? Now this was the moment for me. The moment that really brought home the Primarch Fulgrim once was. This is the strength of Fulgrim, the beauty of Sanguinius, the pride of Rogel Dawn, the love of Vulcan, the educator of Guilliman, and the wordsmanship of Horus. The symbol of the Imperium that Fulgrim represents. Such a tragic fall. This novel, and that passage most of all, truly made me miss a loyal Fulgrim more than I ever have before. Such great writing by Josh Reynolds. We are so used to the arrogant, pompous, and even traitor Fulgrim, that the Fulgrim he was gets forgotten. And when we do see him, it's so hard to connect with him because you know what he becomes. But this novel really does a fantastic job of endearing him to you once more, showing you the glory Fulgrim used to be. In a post-Great Crusade Imperium, I could easily have seen Fulgrim assuming some kind of diplomatic role. And man, this made me want that loyal clone of Fulgrim to return more than ever. To see this Fulgrim, this one, once more out in the current Imperium, speaking with Guilliman, or even his fallen self. Man, that would that'd just be so awesome. I don't think we'll ever get it, but man, I hope we do. But as always guys, what do you think? Do you miss the pure, loyal Fulgrim? Or are you glad on what he became? Was Fulgrim always destined to fall? And was it the tragedy that I say? As always, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support really means a lot to me. It truly does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.